Yeah, let's jump in. I'm Marc Stallion. I will be asking you some questions for the Filmmakers Corner for I.F.B's 4th annual film festival, which you all got to showcase your lovely work, and I'm excited to learn about it. So let's start off by you just introducing yourselves and your roles in creating this project. Yeah, so you have the mic, you can start.
Yeah, my name is John Benjamin Terrell. I'm the director, writer, and editor of this project.
Lovely, cool.
My name is Gabi Meyer, and I play Lila.
And I'm Tyler Hudson, and I play Harry.
Cool, awesome. So, my first question is the title. How'd you come up with this title in particular? Like, what did you start with it and then give the story? Did you have the story and then at the end you're like, okay, this is what we're gonna call it? Like, how did that work for you?
It's funny you asked that because usually titles are so challenging for me. I came up with the concept I think it was Christmas Day of my senior year of high school. I guess that was 2022, I think.
Okay.
So I came up with the premise, I go upstairs, and that's just kind of the first thing that comes to my mind is the title for whatever reason. So then I find a way to implement into the dialogue. And it just seems to fit, just kind of the idea of the wife serving the husband something. You know, there's lots of coffee sort of analogies out there with if you like it hot or not and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's where it came from, but it was just kind of a instinctive thing with the title.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like studying them because titles are just so interesting and they get overlooked sometimes, but they have a lot of meaning behind them sometimes to the writers. This is sentiment, right? Where your story might have come from is a title. Titles are all kind of things, so yeah, I like to start there. But now I want to know what pushed you or drove you to write this story. What was the thing that was like, okay, I'm going to write this thing?
Yeah, it was a couple of things. It was just, it was one of those scripts that just kind of kind of fall out of the sky a bit. Some scripts you got to work in a Google Doc and just do the arc for weeks.
Yeah.
This one was written very quickly, at least the first draft was, and then over the next 2 years, of course, it changed quite drastically. But I think mainly it's inspired by a lot of different things, and it was written at such a different stage in my life. It's weird to look back and see where did it come from then, and how has it evolved in my mind now, and all that stuff. So, but I think it's even though it's set in the 50s and about a married couple, it's thematically rooted in people repressing themselves and playing roles in their families and their friendships, and just things you've seen in the middle class with people staying together for their kids and sacrifices they make emotionally for what they might see as a greater purpose, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it comes from, and I just use that as a vessel to look at the nuclear family and gender roles in America especially. So.
Interesting. I find it very fascinating that you mentioned writing it during the different stages of your life, right? It's if you're not doing, I don't want to say just art, but if you're not doing something that's developing in over a span of time, most of the time we don't really look at where we are in life and the things that we're learning actively. But if you're working on a project through all this time, it's okay, I'm working in this stage of life and I have these perspectives, these ideas, and then 6 months later you're in a completely different phase of your life and you're working on it still and you have a whole new, right, because you're actively working on something, you kind of feel and see that. So I think that was a very unique experience. And I'm glad you mentioned that because it's a bold reminder, right? These two lovely performers, where did you meet them? How did they come on board?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I wrote it, there's a lot of things with this script that really made me nervous because just due to the limitations you have as a student filmmaker, the fire, the baby. So, the big thing from the start I knew was the casting had to be great. The actors had to really nail the role. So I just feel so blessed that I found these two because I really couldn't ask for better performances. People they're such a joy to work with as well. But I just found them on Actors Access, so a lot of it was just they just applied for the roles, and I think Gabi was the first self-tape that I got. Now originally I was planning on doing a bigger audition process, 2 stages, but I saw her self-tape. It was so so close.
Sometimes it just happens
how I wanted. I was I just offered her pretty much as soon as I got the other submissions. And
sometimes it happens like that.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating, and I'm curious to know where the relationship goes, but it's one of my longtime filmmaking partners. I actually, one of my first acting gigs was on his project. He was a student filmmaker at the time. And I went and auditioned for the role, and literally I was the first person of the day. And he literally was like, I don't want to see anyone else. You have the role. He was like, he looked at the other cast members and they were like, what are you talking about? He was like, no, that's what we need, right? And now, you know, what, 8 years later, we're making films together, right?
That's amazing.
That's partner. So it's just that's a very fascinating experience, and it happens. You know what I mean? So I was gonna ask, like, so what was it when you saw his character?
Oh yeah.
Where, like, what was it for you? It was like, what helped you understand, like, that's what I need?
Yeah, for sure. So for one, he looks the part. I feel like especially he just has like this immediate like screen presence. I think, which like some people have, some people don't. But I really think like you see him on camera and like he just demands that attention. So I noticed that in his I noticed that in his reels and his self-tape. So it was immediately like just how I saw the character visually in my head, what really matched. But another thing, and one way that the film did develop from when I initially wrote it, I think when like the day of I wrote it, Harry was a lot more of like just totally despicable. And I mean, he does do a lot of, I mean, he obviously is a bit of an unlikable character in this film, but you know, after I talked to like, I think it was especially my dad who helped work out like how to make it realistic to how marriage is, is that there are numerous sides, and even if he is making mistakes, I needed someone who could play the human side, the empathetic side of Harry. And also just with the whole theme of something looking great on the outside, but being kind of dark on the inside. I wanted someone who could play both those sides, play the darker side, but also could look like this is, you know, a great husband, a great situation. And yeah, I think he pulled it off magnificently.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a question for you too. It's kind of a two-part question, right? But the first part is, what was your favorite thing about working on this project, and then what was one of the biggest things you learned after, just as a performer, as a as a filmmaker? You're actors, you're filmmakers, right? So it's like, what did you learn, and then what was your favorite thing about working on this project?
I love that it was set in the 50s. I mean, like, it's so fun. Like the costumes, the tone, and all of it. That was so cool to play. Really loved it.
I was going to re-ask that. It was a period piece, right? Because you do have a period piece.
I've been told.
You can fit, man. You can do period pieces up and down.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I don't know if it did anything to what I did on screen, but I was like listening to 50s music and stuff, like on my way to set or whatever, just always trying to get myself like in the zone. So that was like super fun for me to do. Love that. I would say what I learned the most is just really working with Ben. Like, Ben is like a very specific director, so which is great for how my mind works too. So he would go moment to moment. He's like, in this second, this is what you're thinking. In this second, this is what you're thinking.
Interesting, yeah.
You know, and so to really break everything down like moment to moment, which is what happens, I guess, throughout life. You just don't go that slowly as you're experiencing it. So that was like a really pleasurable experience. It was like really nice to be that specific and like try to find those beats.
That's interesting. Yeah. Cool approach. And how about for you?
Part of this process is we went to Ben's class at his school, Viola, and performed a piece in front of his class. So I love that because I come from a theater background. So it was like really helpful to kind of go through start to finish before we even went on set, like in front of an audience. I feel like I can always get that reaction, that energy of like which moments are people connecting with. So that was really helpful to go into into set with that kind of information about the character, the story. And then similar to Tyler, like Ben would be really great with like his notes, just like when filming. Like giving you pieces to think about, or let's try this, or even just like giving positive feedback. Like you sometimes don't get that from directors on set of like, I love that take, and just having that like confidence booster throughout the day was great. So
that's beautiful. That's good. Sounds like you actually had a good experience.
Yeah, we had so much fun. It was so fun.
Yeah, that's good. So my last question for you is, what's one of the biggest things that you want the audience to take away or experience done? Credits roll, the audience is sitting there, there's something in their mind. What is that?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to create something that like a story that had legs to it, because the story ends, and I'm fully satisfied with where their arcs end, but there is so much left that's going to happen after the credits roll. So it's like we cut to at the end of the film, we cut to the white picket fence house, which is kind of like a nice little metaphor for what the whole story is about. Something that looks great on the inside or the outside. On the inside, you just know like the chaos that's kind of going on, which is I think very like it's really what it is for both of those characters. So hopefully they can. I think the audience hopefully thinks about what happens next, but also maybe like it'd be nice if like we could reflect a little inward and see like where's areas in my life that I may be covering up with the truth is. Yeah. How can I confront that?
Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful. I love that. Let your audience handle questions about themselves.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for allowing me to fuck the brains a little bit, and thank you for sharing your content with I.F.B. and this year's film festival, and for sharing it with the world, for creating, for being a filmmaker.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good.